Chapter 15, The Broker, January 14th, 1930, New York City. New York hit us like a hammer. The noise, the steel, the speed. St. Louis had its shadows. Baltimore had its secrets. But New York? New York had teeth. Edward Morgan was in the city. That much we knew. Gary had tracked wire transfers linked to a shipping firm based in Manhattan, Larkstone Imports, a front like everything else in this damn story. We arrived just after noon, tired, quiet, and heavily armed. Gary handled the surveillance. Mark handled the muscle. I handled the part where we didn't all end up in a body bag. The Larkstone building sat between a bank and a tailor on 49th Street. 10 stories tall, polished windows, and a front desk with a smile too clean to be real. We didn't go in the front. Instead, we rented a room across the street with a clear line of sight to the lobby. Gary brought out the scope. "He's in there," he said. "4th floor. Office lights went on 20 minutes ago." Mark cracked his knuckles. "Time to knock?" "Not yet," I said. We waited 2 more hours. At 3:47 p.m., Morgan appeared. Thin, sharp suit, gloves, slicked hair, face like marble. He left with a briefcase, stepped into a black Ford, and drove south. We followed, all the way to the Manhattan Bridge, where the car pulled into a warehouse lot near the East River. We waited until he went inside. Then we moved. The warehouse was wide, cold, and silent except for the lapping of water and the sound of Morgan's shoes on concrete. We entered from the rear. Guns drawn. Inside, crates, tarps, dust, and one man, Edward Morgan. He was standing by a crate, the briefcase open. Inside, the ledger. He looked up, almost amused. "Ah," he said, "Mr. Scism, I was wondering when you'd show." "You planning on selling it?" I asked. "I already have," he replied. Gary raised his pistol. "Who? Does it matter?" Morgan said, though. "The highest bidder gets to decide what the world remembers." Mark stepped forward. "You're done." Morgan smiled. "No, gentlemen, you are." That's when the gunfire started. Shots from the catwalk above. Automatic, loud, close. We dove for cover. Mark returned fire. Gary hit the deck, firing up. I flanked left, took down one of the shooters with a clean round to the chest. Another one ran. Morgan was gone. By the time we cleared the catwalk, the Ford was screaming down the pier. The crate was still there. The ledger? Gone. But not for long. Gary stepped forward and pulled something from the fallen shooter's coat. A shipping manifest. 1 crate, 1 destination, Lisbon. Morgan wasn't just selling secrets. He was about to ship the truth out of the country, and we had less than a day to stop him. Chapter 16, January 15th, 1930, New York Harbor. The manifest was clear. 1 crate, sealed under diplomatic customs, bound for Lisbon aboard a freighter called the Marianne, scheduled to depart at 4 a.m. from Pier 17. We had 6 hours. We used every second. Gary wired a contact in customs to delay the manifest approval. Mark borrowed a dockworker's uniform, complete with grease-stained cap and a forged ID. I made 2 calls, one to the Evening Star and one to a name in Washington I swore I'd never use again. At 3:30 a.m., we were on the pier. The harbor was all fog, chains, and groaning steel, the kind of place that could swallow a man whole without a ripple. The Marianne was massive, its hull rusted, its crew mostly asleep or pretending to be. But the dock was alive with crates, cranes, and 1 black car parked near the loading ramp. Edward Morgan. He was pacing. Calm, confident, watching a small crew lift a marked crate onto the cargo elevator. The crate, the ledger. Gary took position near the freight office. Mark stayed by the car in case Morgan tried to run. I walked straight toward him. He saw me and smiled like we were old friends meeting for coffee. "Patrick," he said, "you made it. Step away from the crate." "Can't," he said, tapping his watch. "In 15 minutes, this boat leaves the harbor, and with it, any proof of what happened in 1924. I didn't stop. He put his hand in his coat. So I stopped. "Don't," I said. "You think you're doing the right thing," Morgan said, "but you're not. That file will ignite a war of whispers no one will survive. Britain will deny it. Germany will call it fake. America will bury it under politics." "Maybe," I said. but it won't be silent anymore. Then Mark stepped from behind the car, gun drawn. Morgan froze. Gary gave the signal. 2 Harbor Patrol officers approached from the side, real ones this time. Friends of a friend, unofficially interested in the truth. They saw the crate, they saw the documents Gary had given them, and they moved in. Morgan didn't resist. He just smiled as they cuffed him. "I told you," he whispered to me. "Truth doesn't end wars, it starts them." We watched as the crate was offloaded and placed under lock and key. The ledger was safe, for now, and Edward Morgan, he was going to talk, whether he wanted to or not. Chapter 17, The Cost of Noise. January 15th, 1930, just after dawn. The sun came up like a tired boxer, slow, bruised, but still swinging. We sat at a diner on 43rd and 11th, coffee thick as tar, eggs untouched. The kind of place where no one asks your name and the waitress calls you Han because it's easier than learning your story. The ledger sat on the table between us, locked in a steel case. Morgan was in a federal holding cell across town, talking only in riddles and half-truths. The British consulate had already sent a man down to observe the process, which was code for clean up what they could. Gary stirred his coffee without drinking it. Mark stared out the window, jaw set like stone. Me? I sat there listening to the silence in my head where Jack, Shane, and Scott used to be. "They're going to bury this," Mark said finally. "Maybe," I answered. Gary looked up. "But they can't unprint the headlines, can't unsend the telegrams, can't unsee the pictures." I nodded. We'd made our move, pulled the thread, and now the fabric was starting to unravel. Not fast, but enough to make them sweat, enough to make them remember. I looked down at the steel case. "We have what they killed for," I said. "What they lied for, what they sent men across oceans to hide." Mark glanced at me. "So what do we do with it?" Gary pulled a small black notebook from his coat. Inside was a list, names, reporters, politicians, judges. 3 veterans from Wakefield's original team, still alive and willing to talk. "We build a wall," Gary said, "with witnesses, with ink, with facts. So if they try to bury us, they have to bury 1,000 others too." Mark chuckled. "Hope they bring a big enough shovel." I lit a cigarette and looked out at the street. Cars rolled by. A paperboy shouted the morning headline. Somewhere across the river, the world went back to pretending it was normal. But we knew better. We lit the fuse. Now we had to see where the fire ran. I stood and put a 10 on the table. "We find the others," I said. "The people Morgan was dealing with, the buyers, the handlers, anyone whose fingerprints are on this mess." "And then?" Gary asked. I exhaled smoke and tucked the ledger under my arm. "Then we make damn sure they never try this again." Welcome to Scism Detective Agency stories, where the fog is thick, the coffee's black, and danger is always a step behind. Step into the smoke-filled alleys and shadowed train yards of 1920s America, where every case begins with a whisper and ends with a bang. This channel brings you original noir audio dramas, serialized mystery stories, and voice-over narratives steeped in grit, espionage, and betrayal. Follow former United States Navy intelligence officer Patrick Scism as he uncovers dark secrets in the heartland of the American Empire. Whether you're here for old-school detective tales or period-accurate historical thrillers, you're in the right place. Like what you hear? Hit like, tap subscribe, and ring the notification bell so you never miss a case file. Drop a comment to tell us which mystery has you hooked or who you think did it. Coming soon, join the agency on Patreon. Want more stories, exclusive case files, behind-the-scenes content, and early access to new episodes? Our Patreon page is launching soon. Help support independent storytelling and get inducted into the inner circle. The cases are open, the city never sleeps, and you're on the list. Welcome to the Scism Detective Agency.